Celebration, Florida. A town built on dreams. White fences frame clean sidewalks. Palm trees sway in the breeze. It's a place where families ride bikes at sunset and neighbors wave from their front porches. At the center of one quiet cul-de-sac lived the Todd family. Anthony Todd, a respected physical therapist, kind, soft-spoken, always seen with a smile. His wife, Megan, gentle, friendly, a devoted mother. Together they had 3 children, Alec, a bright 13-year-old, Tyler, just 11 and full of life, and Zoe, only 4, her laughter often the first sound of the morning. Even their dog, Breezy, added to the picture-perfect charm. Their home was always buzzing with activity, birthday parties in the backyard, soccer jerseys drying on the porch, Christmas lights twinkling long after the holidays were over. They were the family everyone admired. The kind you'd trust to watch your kids or water your plants when you went out of town. Neighbors called them the perfect family. And to most they were. But perfection has a way of hiding the truth. In early January something felt different. The Todd house went quiet. No children laughing. No lights at night. The mailbox overflowed. Breezy's bark, once a common sound, was gone. A few noticed, but in a busy world silence is easy to miss. Days passed. Then weeks. And when a family member couldn't reach them by phone, they called the local sheriff. Officers arrived, expecting a routine check. But as they stepped onto the porch they smelled something off. A deep silence hung in the air. The door creaked open, and what they found inside would send a shock through the heart of the town. Because the Todd family, every one of them, had vanished. No calls. No notes. No signs of a struggle. A family once full of life, simply gone. In Celebration, where nothing bad ever happens, a mystery was about to unfold. One that would lead detectives down a path no one could have predicted. A path filled with secrets, loss, and a darkness that lived behind the warmest smiles. And it all started with a family that just disappeared. The Todd home once echoed with the sounds of life. Children laughing, doors opening and closing, a dog barking at squirrels in the yard. But then, it stopped. First it was small things. A neighbor noticed the kids hadn't been at the park that week. Another that the curtains were always drawn. Mail began to pile up at the front door. Packages sat untouched on the porch. Days past delivery. Text messages went unanswered. Calls rang and rang, no reply. Then someone saw Anthony. He was walking near the woods behind the house, alone. His clothes were wrinkled and his face pale. His usual smile gone. His eyes empty. When a neighbor waved, he didn't wave back. And then came the smell. It was faint at first, just a whisper on the wind. But by the end of the week, it was impossible to ignore. A thick, heavy odor that clung to the air. It drifted from the Todd home and into the lives of everyone nearby. One worried family member called the police requesting a welfare check. It was a quiet weekday afternoon when deputies arrived. Their body cameras clicked on as they approached the house. They knocked. No answer. Knocked again, still silence. A sense of unease settled in. One officer walked to the side of the house and tried the back door. It was unlocked. Inside was stillness. The officers stepped into the kitchen. Dishes were in the sink. A blanket draped over the couch. But the air, it was wrong. Heavy. Stale. Unnatural. Then they moved to the stairs. What they found next was worse than anyone could imagine. Because hidden behind those closed doors was something no one in this peaceful town could ever prepare for. A truth so haunting, it would change Celebration forever. And the image captured on those cameras would never be forgotten. Inside the Todd home the air was still. The silence, complete. As deputies moved through the house, each step seemed to echo louder than the last. They called out, no reply. The living room showed signs of daily life paused mid-motion. A child's shoe near the stairs. A television remote left on the floor. A half-eaten plate on the counter, now cold. Then, they reached the master bedroom. The door creaked open. And there, beneath the soft glow of a single lamp, lay a scene no one would ever forget. 5 bodies. For human. 1 animal. Megan Todd lay at the edge of the bed, her arms gently resting by her sides. Next to her, carefully arranged, were her children. Alec, the oldest, placed with care. Tyler, still wearing his favorite hoodie. Little Zoe, her tiny frame nestled under a folded blanket. And at their feet, wrapped in a worn blanket, lay Breezy, the family dog. No blood on the walls. No overturned furniture. No sign of struggle. Just stillness. A first responder later said, it was like stepping into a tomb. Cold. Silent. Too perfect. It wasn't just the presence of death that shocked them. It was the absence of chaos. Whoever had done this had taken their time. The children's personal items, drawings, toys, trinkets had been placed with care. A rosary rested in Zoe's hands. A soccer scarf lay across Tyler's chest. But there was one detail that sent a chill through every investigator in that room. One body was missing. Anthony Todd, the father, the husband, was nowhere to be found. And suddenly, a peaceful home in Celebration became a crime scene, like no other. Detectives began to realize this was not random. It was not a break-in gone wrong. This was deliberate. As crime scene teams worked through the night, trying to make sense of the horror before them, one question echoed louder than all the rest. Where was Anthony? And what could drive a man to erase his entire world? With the discovery inside the Todd home, one question became urgent. Where was Anthony? Detectives worked around the clock. They combed through his recent activity, his texts, his calls, his finances. What they found was unexpected. Anthony Todd was already on the radar. Federal investigators had been quietly building a case. Healthcare fraud, unpaid debts, a business collapsing under pressure. The image of a calm, successful family man was beginning to crack. Then just days after the discovery, he was spotted. At a Starbucks, just miles from his home. He looked thin, tired. But he didn't run. He didn't protest. He simply raised his hands and said, "I know why you're here." There was no struggle, no chase. They brought him in. In the cold, gray walls of the interrogation room, Anthony sat calmly. His voice soft. His eyes distant. Detectives expected denial, fear, anger. But what they got was something else entirely. A quiet voice, a strange smile, and 7 words that sent a chill down every spine in the room. "I just want to be with them." No panic, no confusion, just calm and something else. Something harder to name. Then came the moment, the shift. He leaned forward, and then he told them everything. The events of that night, the beliefs, the plan. What unfolded in the next few hours would shock even the most seasoned detectives. Not just for what he had done, but for why he claimed he had done it. The man they once saw walking his daughter to school had become something unrecognizable. And the line between grief, madness, and guilt was about to blur beyond recognition. As detectives listened to Anthony Todd's calm confession, they struggled to understand. Not just what had happened, but why. Then came the words no one expected. An apocalypse. Anthony claimed that he and Megan believed the world was ending. That life as they knew it was about to fall apart. And that the only way to stay together was to leave this world behind. He called it a family pact. A decision, he said, made out of love and fear. He described late nights watching strange videos online. Doomsday theories, end-of-the-world warnings, voices preaching about eternal life. Megan, already battling years of illness, began to believe, and Anthony followed her. Together they began researching. Quietly, secretly. Search histories revealed pages about the afterlife. Articles on how to pass peacefully. Lists of over-the-counter items that could ease the transition. Detectives uncovered hours of reading on cult practices, rituals, plans. They had taken notes, crossed out ideas, written alternatives. And in the final days before it all happened, they settled on one word: salvation. But for those who walked into that bedroom, there was no peace, no higher calling, only silence and sorrow. One detective put it simply: he was planning for salvation. What he gave them was slaughter. The belief in something greater had twisted into something deadly, a shared delusion, or perhaps something darker. Because the question that haunted everyone in that room was whether Megan truly agreed, or whether Anthony had acted alone. No struggle, no defense wounds. Only one person left alive to tell the story. And as investigators began to dig deeper into that pact, they realized that faith, when bent far enough, could become a weapon. And Anthony Todd may have used it to take everything. Of all the things Anthony Todd confessed, one moment stood out above the rest. He said, "We talked with the boys, they said they didn't want to live without us." It was a sentence that stopped the room cold. Detectives sat in silence, trying to process what they had just heard. Was it true? Had the children, Alec, 13, and Tyler, just 11, truly accepted what was coming? Or had they been led there, one quiet conversation at a time? Investigators reviewed interviews, notes, and audio recordings. They searched for signs of understanding, of agreement. What they found was far more complicated. In weeks before the tragedy, the children had asked strange questions. What happens when we die? Will we still be together? Anthony told them stories. Promised peace. Promised family. He didn't threaten. He didn't shout. Instead, he convinced. Experts would later call it emotional grooming. A subtle, quiet kind of control. One that doesn't frighten, but slowly reshapes a child's view of the world. And on that final night, the boys didn't run. They stayed. One by one, their lives were taken. Gently, methodically, and with chilling care. Alec, the eldest, was first. Then Tyler. Zoe, just 4 years old, was last. No cries. No screams. Only stillness. A forensic psychologist later said, in these cases, the parent doesn't see themselves as a killer. They see themselves as a guide. They believe they're leading their family to something better. But to those left behind, it was unthinkable. The trust of a child. The safety of home. The bond between parent and child, used not to protect but to persuade. And now, in the quiet town of Celebration, where laughter once echoed through the Todd home, there was only silence. The kind of silence that never leaves. In Anthony Todd's version of events, Megan was not just a bystander. She was a believer. He claimed they planned it together. That Megan helped with the children. That she chose to go last. And when the time came, she picked up the knife herself. But investigators had doubts. The autopsy told a different story. Megan Todd had multiple stab wounds. Deep, deliberate. But her body also showed signs of something else. Heavy levels of sedatives. The kind that make limbs weak. That slow the heart. That cloud the mind. Enough to dull pain. Enough to knock someone unconscious. It left a chilling question behind. Could Megan have done this to herself? Or was she another victim, drugged, weakened, and unable to resist? There were no signs of a struggle. No defensive wounds. No scratch marks. Only quiet and stillness. Anthony said it was her choice. But science didn't agree. Forensic experts were split. Some believed she may have been conscious but fading. Others said the drugs would have made movement nearly impossible. The truth? No one could say for sure. What remained was doubt. Friends remembered Megan as a loving mother. A woman who fought through years of illness just to stay strong for her kids. A woman who believed in natural health, gentle parenting, and peace. Could she really have chosen this path? Or had her pain, emotional, physical, been twisted into something else? Some believe Anthony manipulated her. Slowly. Quietly. That over time he pulled her into his world of fear and faith. That in her most vulnerable moment she trusted the wrong voice. Others aren't so sure. And so the question lingers. Was Megan a partner in this tragedy, or its final victim? In a case built on confessions, theories, and silence, her voice is the one we may never hear. And sometimes the scariest part of the story is not what we know, but what we never will. At first, Anthony Todd told a detailed story. He remembered every moment, every step, every choice. But then, his story changed. He said he didn't remember, that he'd been asleep, that he woke up and found them, already gone. He claimed it was Megan, that she'd done it, that he was too late to stop it. Detectives listened, and quietly they began to pull apart the story, piece by piece. The forensic team moved through the home again, this time looking for answers between the lies. Fingerprints, blood trails, smudges on door handles. A timeline drawn in dried splatter and shifting shadows. The evidence told a story of its own. And it didn't match Anthony's. There were fingerprints only he could have left. Items only he could have moved. Signs of control, of planning, of presence. And then came the phone records. Megan's phone had activity after Anthony claimed she was gone. A call. A text. A message to a friend saying the children weren't feeling well. That message was sent the day after Anthony said she died. It was a detail he hadn't expected anyone to find. And it shattered what was left of his version. Detectives called it a strategy of confusion. Say enough. Change the story. Muddy the truth, until no one knows what to believe. But the evidence held steady. And the more Anthony talked, the more it broke down. His voice, once calm, became uneven. His story, once certain, now tangled. What began as a confession was now a game of shifting blame. But for the families left behind, it wasn't a game. And for the investigators chasing answers, one thing had become clear. When the truth threatens the lies we build, the cracks always show. And Anthony Todd's world was beginning to crumble. In the courtroom, all eyes were on Anthony Todd. The man once seen as a loving father, now sat silently in a suit, staring straight ahead. He took the stand. His voice low. His answers flat. Almost without emotion. At times, his words contradicted themselves. He said he didn't remember what happened. Then, he remembered too much. He said it was a pact. Then, claimed he had nothing to do with it. The jury listened closely. But the more he spoke, the less it made sense. The defense called it a breakdown. They argued insanity. That Anthony had lost touch with reality. That his mind had turned on him. They brought in doctors. Expert witnesses. They said he had been under stress. That his thoughts weren't his own. But then came the prosecution. Their tone was sharp. Their words, simple and direct. They pointed to the search history. The timelines. The planning. They showed how carefully everything had been done. And in their final statement, they delivered the line that would echo through the courtroom. He didn't kill them to save them. He killed them to escape. Escape from debt. From failure. From everything falling apart. It was not about belief. It was about control. The jury took just hours. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty. On all counts. One by one, the names were read aloud. Megan. Alec. Tyler. Zoe. Breezy. Each count, a final reminder of what was lost. There was no outburst. No protest. Anthony sat quietly. The same calm expression he wore in the police interview returned. But this time the illusion was gone. Because behind the calm voice, behind the quiet eyes, was a man no longer able to hide. The courtroom had seen the truth. And with that, the door to his freedom closed for good. In the weeks that followed the verdict, silence once again settled over Celebration, Florida. But this time, it was different. The headlines faded. The cameras left. But for the families, the pain had just begun. Megan's loved one spoke through tears. She would never have done this. She loved her children. She fought through illness just to be there for them. That wasn't her. It couldn't be. They were left with more than grief. They were left with questions. Heavy. Endless. Unanswered. What? Why would someone so trusted, so admired, commit something so unthinkable? Psychologists and criminal experts have searched for reasons. They speak of control, fear, and a mind unraveling behind a perfect mask. They talk about pressure. About quiet suffering. About a man who saw no way out. But no explanation could ever undo what was done. Anthony Todd once lived in a home filled with laughter, toys, bedtime stories, and Sunday pancakes. He was the father who held little hands, the husband who promised forever. But somewhere along the way, that man disappeared. And in his place stood someone else, someone capable of something no one saw coming. In the end, it wasn't about belief. It wasn't about salvation. It was about control. And when Anthony Todd realized he was losing it, he chose not to face the fall. He chose to burn everything down instead. The people who knew him best still struggle with the truth. They wonder what signs they missed, what moments were lost. And the town of Celebration, once built to reflect joy and safety, now holds a darker memory. The Todd home sits empty, but the story inside it still echoes. A final thought remains. Was this truly a shared decision between two broken parents? Or was it the ultimate act of manipulation, from a man who wanted to play the role of protector, even as he became something else entirely? We may never know, but we want to hear from you. Was this a mutual pact, or a carefully crafted lie? Let us know what you think in the comments below.